Hey guys! To celebrate the holidays my way, I wanted to share a Christmas horror story with you. Not exactly the usual festive tradition, and definitely not something you'd hear around the fireplace. I hope you enjoy. It was early December, and the town was covered in twinkling lights and garlands. Everywhere Dan looked, people were humming carols, hauling wrapped gifts, or chatting excitedly about holiday plans. Normally he could ignore all the forced cheer, but this year it grated on him. The breakup with Lisa was still fresh. Their shared friend group had evaporated almost overnight. Some quietly took Lisa's side while the rest simply disappeared after the initial gossip-fueled check-in. No one called him anymore. No one asked how he was doing. The bright decorations outside seemed to mock him with their hollow joy. In his small, stale apartment, Dan felt the holiday looming like a weight pressing on his chest. One night, while scrolling mindlessly through social media, an ad popped up with a message. "No one should be alone for Christmas. Let us help." Dan rolled his eyes, assuming it was spam. An escort service maybe, a phishing scam, or just some desperate holiday gimmick. Whatever it was, he ignored it and kept scrolling. But it kept coming back. No matter the app, no matter the device, phone, tablet, laptop, the ad kept reappearing over and over with slightly different wording. Loneliness shouldn't be a punishment, or if they left you, someone should pay. The tone felt strangely tailored to him, and an eerie feeling washed over him like a faint prickling under his skin. Irritated, but also mildly curious, Dan clicked on the ad. An old-looking website loaded, grainy as if it hadn't been updated in decades. It was starkly plain. No menus, no links, no branding. The emptiness of the page felt deliberate. At the center of the screen, a single line pulsed faintly. "You deserve better. We can remove the source of your pain." The phrasing hit something raw and aching inside of Dan. It framed his loneliness like a crime committed against him, an injustice. And for a moment, Dan let himself buy into that idea. He clicked on the message. A text box appeared with a prompt. "Submit the name of the one who stole joy from your holiday." Still bitter, Dan typed Lisa's name. On impulse, fueled by anger and self-pity, he added, "She ruined everything." He hesitated only a second before hitting submit. The response appeared instantly, as if someone had been waiting for him. "Your burden will be lifted before Christmas." The next morning, Dan jolted awake to the sound of his phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, dozens of texts, all from mutual friends he hadn't heard from in weeks. Before he could open the notifications, another call came through. "Dan?" a frantic voice said. "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you all morning. It's Lisa. She's dead." Dan froze. "Annie went over this morning when Lisa didn't show up for coffee, and she found her. It's bad." "Dan, are you there?" Each word felt like fragments of ice cutting through him before he could even react. "Dan, answer me." He flinched and finally managed to speak. "Yeah, I'm here. I'm just shocked. I can't believe this. Do we know anything yet?" No one knew the details. only that Annie had found the body and that she'd already told police that Lisa had broken things off with Dan a few weeks earlier. A hard lump formed in his throat, too big to swallow. A recent breakup meant suspicion. It meant he'd be a person of interest. That afternoon, the police called. They asked him to come in for a statement in the morning. By then, the news had spread everywhere. Social media flooded with shock, sympathy posts, and comments from people who knew Lisa. Dan scrolled through them with growing dread, each notification tightening something inside him. Then the memory hit. The website. The message. Your burden will be lifted before Christmas. A cold, prickling panic crawled up his spine. He opened his apps, searching desperately for that ad. Nothing. He checked every platform, every device. He combed through his browser history. The site was gone, like it never existed. Did I dream it? Dan wondered, grasping for any explanation. It seemed possible. An exhausted, lonely mind imagining things. But the memory of those messages, personal and eerily specific, echoed vividly in his mind. Too vivid to dismiss. Determined to find any trace of the ad, or anyone who might have seen it, Dan started digging. After hours of searching, he stumbled across old news articles. Strange, unsolved December murders, all loosely connected to themes of heartbreak, loneliness, or bitter family fractures. A link posted in the comments of one of the articles led him to an anonymous forum. That's where the rabbit hole opened. Threads upon threads of conspiracy theories, all revolving around something users called the Christmas curse. One poster, someone who claimed to have studied the incidents for years, insisted the pattern wasn't random. According to them, the deaths matched an old European fable, a being drawn not by joy, but by bitterness, spite, and wounded pride. Not a Santa who delivers gifts, but something that collects pain. The thread was filled with memes and crude drawings of Krampus-like monsters, but a handful of users pushed back, insisting the creature tied to the legend was even older than Krampus and far less restrained. Something nameless that thrived on human resentment. Dan felt his stomach turn. Could he really have caused Lisa's death? He hadn't meant anything by it. He certainly hadn't meant that. His first meeting with the police felt straightforward enough, but anxiety chewed at him. He didn't have an alibi for the night Lisa died. Living alone wasn't a crime, but it wasn't exactly helpful either. And the recent breakup hovered over every question the detectives asked. His instinct proved right. Over the next couple of weeks, the police called him back again and again, each interview slightly more pointed than the last. Dan could feel suspicion hardening around him like ice. Christmas Eve. While making dinner, Dan heard faint scratching somewhere in the apartment. When he followed the sound, he realized it was coming from beneath the floorboards. That shouldn't have been possible. He lived on the first floor, and the building didn't have a basement. Later, while watching TV, Dan dozed off on the couch. He woke to the delicate jingle of bells. At first, half asleep, he dismissed it as someone's decorations swaying in the wind. But as the sound drifted through the room again, clearer this time, Dan realized it wasn't coming from outside. A cold wave rolled through him. Heart racing, he grabbed his laptop and searched the fable again. Buried deep in an old forum thread, he found a translation of the legend. According to the story, anyone who summoned the creature to, quote, remove their pain, owed a gift in return before Christmas. A gift? What the hell kind of gift? Dan muttered to himself. Rolling further, the answer hit him like a blow. Your soul. The signs of its approach were listed plainly. Scratching and jingling bells. One commenter described a case where a man was found with a hoof-shaped bruise pressed into his chest. Dan's skin went cold. Lisa hadn't been the end. The creature was coming for him next. He checked the time. 11:50 p.m. If the legend was true, he had 10 minutes left. Panicked, Dan hurried to his bedroom and threw a few clothes into a bag. He slung it over his shoulder and headed for the door. A violent crash echoed from the apartment above him, like something massive had fallen. Dan flinched, dropping his bag and instincts driving him into a crouch. Then came the footsteps, slow and heavy, too heavy to be human. Each one shook faint vibrations through the walls. The scratching resumed beneath him, harsher now, like claws digging across the underside of the floor. Dan stared at the boards in horror, suddenly realizing the footsteps upstairs had gone silent. Whatever was up there knew he was here. He forced himself to stand, moving as quietly as possible towards the door. He reached out, fingertips brushing the lock. Suddenly, a chain snapped tight around his neck, yanking him backwards so hard he hit the floor. More chains whipped around his arms, his torso, his legs, tightening until he couldn't draw breath. The metal links clanked together in a rhythm disturbingly similar to festive Christmas bells. Dan tried to scream, but the chains crushed his lungs too tightly. He was dragged across the floor, scraping over the rug and hardwood, and then he saw it. A towering, hunched shape stood in the living room, back turned to him. The glow from the TV flickered over it, revealing coarse, dark fur matted in patches, and long arms ending in black split hooves that clacked against the floor like heavy boots. Its legs were bent like a deer's, but elongated. The creature stood upright, shoulders nearly brushing the ceiling. Its spine curved with sharp edges like something barely contained beneath the skin. A rack of twisted, branching antlers extended from its skull, scraping against the ceiling as it moved. Then, with a low, growling exhale, it turned its head just enough for Dan to see one luminous detail. Eyes, bright, a natural yellow, glowing like lanterns in a winter storm. A tearing sound filled the room as a portal split open before the creature, swirling with black snow and muffled screams. The creature lumbered towards it, dragging Dan behind like a prize. In a final burst of desperation, Dan clawed at the wall near the kitchen doorway, his fingers locking onto the edge. The resistance jerked the chains taut, making the creature pause and glance back. For a heartbeat, Dan saw its face clearly. Elongated muzzle, fanged teeth tucked behind deer-like lips, steam curling from its nostrils, and those blazing yellow eyes burning with ancient hunger. To the creature, Dan's struggle was nothing, a mild inconvenience like brushing away a buzzing insect. With a shuddering pull and a sharp, sickening pop, the chains tore Dan free from the wall. He slid across the floor towards the portal, and in an instant, Dan and the creature vanished. The portal snapped shut, leaving behind only silence. I hope you enjoyed this scary story. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this Christmas nightmare. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next Scary Stories After Dark episode. Thanks for watching.